to the tutorial on using the Preferences or Settings pane in Pena. The Preferences pane, which we also call the Settings pane in various tutorials, same thing, is this icon in the upper right hand corner of the control pane. Tap it once to turn it on, tap it again to turn it off. The Preferences pane controls settings that work overall within Pena. Let's take a look at what some of these settings are. The first one is anti-alias, or smoothing of the jaggies. When you're drawing in a digital paint package, shapes like lines and circles, if they're not perfectly horizontal and vertical as in a line or a circle, which is of course never horizontal or vertical, the edges of these shapes don't fall exactly on pixel boundaries. And so what you end up is with a jagged edge surface that's not very desirable to look at. Anti-aliasing is a technique which smooths out those edges and makes them look much cleaner and sharper and reduces the jaggies. Let's take a look at what that looks like. I'm going to paint a colorful dot on the screen, and this has anti-aliasing turned on, meaning that we're trying to reduce the jaggedness of the edge. And we can see the edge is fairly smooth. We can see a few small bumps in it, but it's fairly smooth. Let's turn anti-aliasing off and draw a dot. And you can immediately see the difference. The edges here are very jagged and not nice and clean. It would be much preferable to paint with the clean one than the non-clean one. So in general, you'll always want to paint and leave anti-aliasing turned on. Why would you want to turn it off? Well, maybe you want that look of jaggedness in your painting, or perhaps you want a slightly faster painting speed. With anti-aliasing turned off, it is slightly faster than with anti-aliasing turned on, but I recommend always leaving it turned on. Let's look at our next choice on the Preferences pane, and that is left-handed. For the most part, Pena is built to work equally well with the right hand or the left hand. It doesn't matter. However, there are a couple tools in Pena where being left-handed or right-handed makes a difference. And one of those tools, for example, is in the color palette. If I use the eyedropper, it allows me to pick colors from the screen. Now you can see where my cursor is. And as I start to move into the colored region, the circle to the upper left of my cursor is showing me the color I happen to be on top of now. You'll notice that cursor is to the left of my finger where the cursor is. That's great. I'm right-handed. That means I can see that circle no matter where my hand is positioned on the screen. However, if I were left-handed, my palm or my finger would probably cover that up. Let's go ahead and back to the Preferences pane and turn on left-handed. Go back to the color picker and do the eyedropper and see how that has changed. Again, picking colors, but now the circle is to my right so that my hand and palm will not obscure the eyedropper as I'm moving on the screen. So if you're left-handed, you'll get some advantages in some of the tools to turning the left-handed switch on. If you're right-handed, leave it turned off. But like I said, for the most part, most of Pena is built to be used equally well with the right hand or the left hand. The next choice is Pane Auto Close, and this is a preference on how panes will automatically close or not. And let's look at what that means. Let's turn on a pane. Here we have our effects pane open, and if I start to paint, all the panes disappear and my paint starts laying on the surface. When I stop painting, the panes I left open reappear, as long as they're not small pop-up panes. Small pop-up panes will automatically be closed. If I turn Pane Auto Close off, this changes this behavior. Again, I've opened a pane. When I tap to paint, the first tap turns off that pane, and then I have to tap again to start painting. So with Pane Auto Close, it will always turn off any open panes with the first tap, and then you can start to paint with the second tap. And that's just a preference on whether you want panes to stay open or panes not to stay open. The next choice is Reset Clock on Paint. If we recall in our brush menu, this icon near the bottom is our clocks, and there are 4 clocks that come with Pena. Each clock has a starting point and how much it should increment, and by default they're all turned off. Clocks are used in all sorts of places in Pena. They're used where you want to change colors on the fly. They can be used to change effects and animate effects and do things like that. In the Preferences pane, you'll notice that by default Reset Clock on Paint is set on. What this means is every time you start to paint, all the clocks will be returned to their starting value that's set in that clock pane. When you turn this choice off, what that means is the clocks are never reset. So with it on, as you start to paint, the clock is reset, and then each brush hit you take is another tick of the clock, another tick of the clock. When you lift your finger and start painting again, the clocks get reset. With it off, the clocks never get reset. Each paintbrush you lay down is the tick of the clock, and if you lift your finger and start painting again, the clock keeps ticking where it left off before. And that's just a preference on how you want clocks to behave. Our next choice is draw surface first. Normally in Pena, and this deals with the intelligent canvas, normally in Pena, if you're using intelligent canvas, your brush effects are executed first, then the output of those are handed to the surface effects, and then the output of that is drawn to the screen. And that's how it should normally work. If you turn this flag draw surface first on, that reverses how that works. With draw surface first on, the surface effects will be drawn first, the output of that will be handed to the brush effects, and then the output of that will hit the screen. Like I said, normal painting in Pena is to draw the brush effects first and then the surface effects. However, you will get a totally different result if you switch that, depending on what your effects are. In some cases, if you switch that, you'll get absolutely nothing because your effects aren't set up so that they can be switched in that way. The final switch choice here is Wacom Bluetooth Stylus. The Wacom company has styluses available for the iPad, and these allow painters to use a more brush-like device as opposed to their finger when painting. This can give you finer control. Some of the Wacom styluses are Bluetooth, which means they're electronic, have a battery. If you have such a stylus, like the Wacom Creative Intuos stylus, Pena can utilize that. You would turn this choice on, and it will then allow you to utilize that stylus when painting. You can use either your finger or the stylus in that case. And there's advantages to using a stylus. First of all, the Wacom Bluetooth styluses are pressure sensitive. That is, the more you push the stylus on the screen, the harder you push, the more pressure is recorded. And we use that to increase the size of the brush as you're painting. So you can get very nice, nuanced, larger and thinner lines just by pushing on your brush a little bit harder or a little bit softer. Another thing that using the Wacom Bluetooth styluses allows you to do is something you can't do anywhere else in the Pena paint package. As we've stressed throughout this package, as you're painting with color 1 and color 2, it is always color 1 that is painted to the screen, never color 2. We've said this over and over again. However, if you're using the Wacom stylus, one of the switches on the stylus lets you temporarily switch whether you are painting with color 1 or color 2. This is really interesting because it allows you to actually have two sets of effects simultaneously and rapidly switch between them just by using the switch on the tablet. This saves a lot of effort by switching on and off effects in the effect pane while you're trying to produce a particular painting. We have two buttons on the Preferences pane. The View Help button will bring you to the website with the Pena help manual on it so that you can learn any part of the package that we didn't cover in the tutorials or find out more details on how effects work. To the left of that, we have the Reset Pena button. If you tap this, you will get a request to reset all Pena settings. You can cancel the reset or go ahead and do it. We'll go ahead and cancel. When you reset Pena settings, it brings it back to more or less factory defaults. None of your saved content will be destroyed. It'll all be there. Any saved brushes, any saved effects or surfaces, any saved canvases will remain untouched. However, all of the preferences, all of the color palettes, everything else will go back to the way the package was the first time you purchased it and ran it. When you do this choice, it will prompt you, if you go ahead and ask it to do the reset, it will tell you to it's going to tell you that it's going to stop running and for you to restart the paint packages. So as soon as you confirm it, it'll pop up a little thing that says, I'm going to turn off now, go ahead and restart me. And then once you see your iPad screen, go ahead and restart Pena and it will be reset back to the factory defaults. The final thing on the Preferences pane is at the very bottom where we have our copyright, and here you can check the current version number to make sure that it's up to what the latest release is. One more word on the Wacom. We didn't tell you exactly how to use it and how to set it up. If you have the Wacom stylus, go to the website, the Pena website, and we have a special section in the manual for how to use the Wacom stylus and how to set it up with Pena. And that concludes the Preferences or Settings pane tutorial in Pena.